James DeLacy here from the Sweet Arts of Fighting, and today I'm going to break down for you a new video from Gilbert Burns. Now, I broke down an older video of his, if you search the channel for Gilbert Burns, you'll find it of one of his fight circuits. So now we're going to run through,
Excellent. Okay.
actually let me mute that. So we've got his secret mobility workout. Oh, it's in Portuguese. Okay, that doesn't help. Regardless, we're going to run through just the concept around mobility, and is this really effective, and is this going to help you as a combat athlete? So we see here they're sitting in the bottom of the squat position. Some of these guys can, some of these guys can't. When we talk, okay, let me start. There's a lot of gurus in this space that will preach these mobility, I guess you could say their whole brand is built on mobility. That's it. It's literally stretching and being able to get into these positions and being quote unquote flexible. Now, do you need to be doing a bunch of mobility in your training? Depends. If you already have the range of motion to perform the sport and do everything you need to do, then becoming extra mobile isn't going to help you in any way whatsoever. It's also not going to reduce your risk of injury. Now, obviously that kind of depends overall. Typically it can be worse to be more flexible, just because you have the extra range of motion where you cannot produce as much force. And that's how you often become injured. So when you're doing mobility training, often the goal is to become, for example, like these static stretches like this, to become more flexible. That's the goal. That's the goal. The problem is static stretching does not increase mobility. And when I say mobility, so typically when we talk about flexibility, it's more of a passive range of motion. Can someone push your leg further into position to have a greater joint range of motion, versus mobility is an active range of motion. Can you produce force at the different end ranges so you can control it? And obviously we want mobility versus just passive flexibility. Now, static stretching is often seen as the way to become more flexible and more mobile. So like, for example, some of these that you're seeing on the screen now. The problem is, yes, you will see and you will feel more flexible after doing something like this. You will be able to sit into your hamstring, stretch further, twist more, whatever it is. But it's not because you've become more flexible, or you're not going to see long-term change. And I'm sure you've felt that as well. If you've ever embarked on a stretching program every day, nothing really changes. And it's because nothing changes at the muscle or tendon. Nothing changes in those structures. And you need those structural changes to have long-term benefits in mobility. So there's some really good research around static stretching over 8+ weeks, and showing that yes, you can become a little more flexible, but that's because you have a greater tolerance to that stretch, versus being able to actually control that range of motion and produce force. And they found that there's no changes structurally to the muscle or tendon. So if that's the case, and static stretching is going to get you there, what should you do instead? And it's relatively simple. It's literally full range of motion strength training. So your typical resistance or strength training program is mobility training. And it's mobility training because you are loading the end ranges of motion. And when you load the end ranges of motion, especially through the eccentric contraction, you are increasing fascicle length. And when we talk about fascicles, just think of a bunch of muscle fibers put together. So if you have, for example, you have a lot of cords coming out of your computer and you kind of bundle them up, that would be like a fascicle. And these fascicles and muscle fibers, they are a series, or in a row, little blocks of muscle fibers, and they're called sarcomeres. And these little blocks of muscle fibers essentially allow you to produce more force at longer muscle lengths. So essentially they're lengthening the muscle when you add more in a row. And on top of that, more in a row typically means they contract faster as well. So there's performance benefits on top of that. But regardless, you want more sarcomeres in a row so you can produce more force at longer muscle lengths. Then it becomes an injury reduction mechanism. So to do that, as I mentioned, full range of motion lifting, loading the end ranges of motion through eccentric training, or even loading end range isometrics, those are all effective for growing more sarcomeres in a row so you can become more mobile and potentially reduce the risk of injury versus just pure static stretching, which, look, there is value to doing some of this. Like after training, there is value here. You're going from a sympathetic state or a fight or flight state, and you're able to quickly maneuver into a parasympathetic or a relaxed, rest and relax, digest state. And that's a good thing. It's a good thing for recovery for you. So I'm not saying that you shouldn't static stretch and this is useless. What I'm saying is if you're static stretching and doing this with the goal of enhancing mobility and flexibility, then it's probably not the best thing to do. If you're doing it for being able to get into a relaxed state, etc., then there's some value there. So that's just touching, I guess, more on the mobility side. But if you enjoyed this breakdown, please let me know. If there's anything else you want me to break down, I will break that down. I haven't done too many recently. I have just been finishing up a new mini little MMA strength and conditioning blueprint ebook. I'll let you know when that drops as well, and I'll put that in the description. It'll be free, so you can download that, and it kind of has everything in there. But I'll see you in the next video.